right. Okay, and we are live, guys. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Sessions with Sham. I'm very happy today to welcome to the show Arti Agarwal. Arti Agarwal is a designer, writer, photographer, artist, and content marketer with a deep interest in Dharma. So a truly multifaceted personality and a much more talented individual than I am. So first and foremost, welcome to the show, Arti.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting to talk to you as well. So before we jump into it, I just want to let people know that if anybody's going to be joining us live today, if you do want to ask us questions in the chat, make sure to put them to me and I will make sure to ask Arti towards the last 20 minutes of our conversation. Alrighty. So before we really get started, I kind of wanted to start with getting to know your motivation for talking about Dharma, because there's so many things that you do. And you recently started a YouTube channel called Hinduism News, where you talk about Dharma and various principles of Dharma and various sort of issues related to Dharma. And what motivated you or prompted you to go down that direction?
So this answer might take a little longer than you might expect.
We have all the time in the world.
So my journey in truth started around like a little less than 10 years ago when I met my guru first. And I had all the possible problems any normal human being has. And I was not happy in my job. I had relationship issues. I was overall generally very discontented with my life. And so I just casually, was sitting in my windowsill and just wondering, where is God? I always believed in God, but I never actually actively did a whole lot of Hindu rituals or anything like that.
Right.
So I was just sitting and I used to work in the oil field at that time. So even when I used to be on the ship, so I was an engineer at that time. So I used to be offshore on the ship with only the sea everywhere. I used to look at the sea and the sky and I used to wonder, where is God? Why isn't he answering me? Why doesn't he show up? And that was a resounding question in my being. And like a few months down the line, I met my guru, Swamiji, this is His Holiness Paramahamsa Nityananda. And I didn't even need to explain to him a whole lot what my problem was. I just told him, I just blabbered something to him and I went up to him for initiation. He just said, don't worry, I'll heal you completely. And this was November. So I just had this feeling after meeting him that, okay, if he cannot heal me, there is nobody in this world who can. So I think I've done everything I can to take care of myself. And it's worth noting that just before this, based on some recommendation of some friends and colleagues and all, I tried to make an appointment with a psychiatrist like 3 times, just because I just wanted some help, and it got cancelled all the 3 times. And I was a really strong believer of the fact that in Hinduism, if something recurs 3 times, thrice, then it has a measurable significance. That's one of the rules of Sanskrit also, actually. So then I was like, I don't think I can ignore this sign. Maybe I'm not supposed to go to a psychiatrist. So after meeting Swamiji, of course, my curiosity and my learning curve about Hinduism, about the basic tenets of Hinduism, about spirituality became steeper and steeper. I kept on learning so much. And the more you learn, the more you realize there is so much to learn. So all my knowledge basically comes from him. And what I saw was that the way Swamiji taught us all the tenets of Hinduism, it was always from the practical application point of view. So, if he's giving you some tenets on how to manifest wealth, he will tell you, do this so you can manifest wealth and try it out, test it out. So he used to teach us how to play with the truths and how to use that to manifest what we want in our lives, as opposed to just doing it because you're supposed to do it. So it was not from the angle that, oh, do this because it is supposed to be done. But it was because, see, you want this in life. This is what Hinduism says on how you can manifest it. Right. And he would always connect it back to the Shastras, to the Upanishads, to the Agavas, to the Bhagavad Gita, to, tell us that he's really teaching us what is there in the scriptures in a way in which we can apply it directly for ourselves. So that was a very unique way of learning Hinduism, which really made me completely fall in love with Hinduism. So even though I was a born and brought up Hindu, I always had a very strong feeling connection with deities and, with the whole philosophy of Hinduism. I never connected with any other religion. But I wasn't practicing Hinduism. I wasn't cherishing it until I met Swamiji. So for 10 years, doing this, and then in the last 4 years or something, seeing exactly how much Hinduism has been attacked in the history, as well as now in the current times, and how there are so many threats on Hinduism, and then seeing my own guru get abused for no reason, seeing other gurus get abused for no reason, seeing our gods abused for no reason, just like that desire to do something about it was always bubbling inside me. It is just that it never came out because I did not it's not like it never came out. I used to still share, but I wasn't that active about it because I used to feel I don't know if I'll be able to do it or not. So this was a question because I do a lot of things, so it was always a little bit of a question that whether I'll be able to do it or not. So then eventually in December I started the website, and then in March I actually started talking and sharing a lot more. I just felt like let me do what I can. If I keep waiting to be ready, there'll never be a good time. So it's not like this was the basic idea which got me started. It was like further and further in life, I'm not going to get any more free. I'm only going to get busier. So there's no point in waiting. Might as well start now, and we'll just figure it out. So I just wanted to share whatever I've learned in Hinduism and whatever is my understanding and what I think we need to do about Hinduism now, and inspire others to do it, because it's not just about me, one person doing it. It's also about inspiring more and more people to live and experience Hinduism as I have, to find life solutions as I have, because my whole life changed just by living Hinduism. So that's why I want to inspire more people to see the sweet side of Hinduism other than whatever they've been told by the mainstream media and all the jazz that goes around. So I guess that's the answer you wanted.
No, that's fantastic. And it's very interesting also because I think in many ways you're sort of almost like a unicorn because you're an urban sort of English speaking, you're involved in marketing, your photography, you're an artist. If I say all of these words in one sentence to describe a person, I'm generally describing somebody who lives in South Delhi and wants absolutely nothing to do with, what is all this puja wuja yaar, and all of that stuff. And all these Hindus, they're just gavar, they live in their villages and they harass all the Muslims and horrible people. That's when I usually describe somebody like that, that's who I'm describing. And it's refreshing, first of all, of course, to see someone who's not in that mold. And secondly, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think the overwhelming majority of the people that I would be using the same words to describe as I described you tend to be that way?
See, I think the problem with a lot of these artistic people is that, they are very deeply emotional. To do anything artistic, to do anything creative, or to do so many things, you need a lot of passion, which of course even I have. But one of the side effects of this, which I also learned from observation, and this is something which I think somebody asked Swamiji once also, is that a lot of people who are very artistic are very, very emotional. So they feel the hurt and the pain of the society more deeply. But the problem is that they need to turn that pain into seeking. They need to turn that, that harrowing or that the criticism they receive from the society, the whole lot of, they go through a whole lot of identity crisis. Because I know when I was younger, people told me, you're confused, you're doing so many things, you're an idiot, you'll fail. Like, I was told those kind of things constantly, not one person, constantly. Right. So when you face that kind of, backlash from everybody and you don't have the strength to deal with it, you turn cynical, sort of, right? You become almost like an atheist. There is no God. There's nobody out there, right? So, and that is what makes you leftist. So if you see, the basic philosophy or the basic principle, belief, whatever you want to call it, of all these, I'm using the word leftist very loosely here, but what I mean is all the anti-Hindu folks. So that's what I mean when I use the word leftist. So all these people, basically one of their, core ideologies is that, it's based on self-denial, in self-doubt, and denial of any divinity, anything called God. So irrespective of which religion they're from. So because all these artistic people don't use that pain into seeking, to actually seek more God. Like, God is God, right? You have to ask for God out of love, not out of anger. Like, where the hell are you? Come show up now. You can't do that, right? He's not your servant,
Right.
right? God, you have to remember you are asking God. So if you ask God to show up with love, with devotion, he will show up. He'll answer you in some way. And that's when you turn to Hinduism. That's when your journey, your spiritual journey starts. But if you're like, you never answered me till now, get lost. I don't care. I don't believe in you. There's no God. I'm going to deny your whole existence itself. That's when you become a theist. And that's when you start pursuing all these idiotic leftist things. Like, I'm going to be very frank on this show because I'm very moderated in my videos.
No, absolutely. Frank is how we like it.
Yeah, so that's why they start doing all these things like, Hindus are stupid, because they've never felt that softer part of Hinduism. They've never felt that sweet devotional aspect of Hinduism. They think anybody else who's being devotional is stupid. They're believing in something that doesn't exist. They don't understand. Only they can't see it, right? I think there's a very famous quote by Franz Kafka or Friedrich Nietzsche or someone, like, the ones who could not hear the music thought the ones who were dancing are crazy, something like that. Right. So that is exactly how I would describe these leftist South Delhi unicorn kind of people, who are very atheist or generally very, very, very censoring of all this stuff like Hinduism and rituals. That's what they are. They can't hear the music. Their lives are dried up. So they don't understand what we are celebrating so much for. Why are we so happy after doing puja? Why is it such a, like, if you go to the temple, why does it feel like, oh, this was a good day to start with? So I think that's what it is. They need to turn their emotional pain and their emotional trauma more towards seeking, more towards, not giving up. They give up too easily. So it's not like we don't go through pain. I went through a lot of pain, physical, emotional, or every type of pain. But it's just that you can't give up, right? If you give up, that's it. Your life is over. It doesn't even matter what you do in life anymore. Like, if you've already given up, you've forgotten what is the very purpose of life itself. Then, okay, next time you'll have to come back with one more birth and then start again. This life is already over. So, that's the pattern I found.
Do you think there's another aspect of it? And the reason I ask is because you see all these people, they say, oh, Hinduism is useless, worthless, all of that stuff. And at the same time, these people will go enjoy, they will say, oh, Sufism, when I hear a Sufi song, my heart just soars and I feel wonderful and this and that. I feel connection to a higher power. And they go sit in the churches for Mass and they say, when I go sit in the church for Mass, my heart soars, I connect to a higher power. It's funny because they only connect to a higher power when they connect to Abrahamic philosophy, which is such an exclusivist philosophy. Like, I have nothing against Christians or Muslims, of course. It's the software that I'm talking about. And the software is a very exclusion-based software. So it's weird because that when they connect to that, they often feel that connection to an almighty. But when we talk about Hinduism, they say, oh, this is all just old mumbo jumbo. Why do you think that is?
Because in all these other religions, you don't have to do anything. You just sit there, you forget, it's escapism. I don't have anything against Buddhism either, but this is the same for the Vipassana. All these people who go for Vipassana for 10 days and all these things, right? It's just escapism. You are just trying to shelve your problems. You don't have to do anything. If you go and do anything, you start with Hinduism, you'll have to start with a sankalpa, right? You have to start with the mantra. Even if you do yoga, you should ideally be starting with the sankalpa mantra and invoking God. You have to move your muscles. Hinduism is not for the lazy people.
Right.
Like, in that sense, mentally lazy. I mean, you can't just sit there and not want to do anything. It's not a communist religion, right? It's like you can't just sit here and expect everybody to shower you without your doing anything. Hinduism, everything starts with a sankalpa. You have to at least make an intention for what you want to do, even if you want to achieve something. In all these other religions, there's nothing. You just go there, you look at someone doing something. It's all very nicely scented. There are nice pictures and paintings on the wall. Even I've been to churches earlier when I was younger. I've never been to any Muslim places of worship just out of personal choice. I've been to some dargahs. And actually, if you see, a lot of these places also have misappropriated many things from Hinduism. So all those incense sticks, all those flowers, all those other sort of soft rituals, or of hanging all the people, all the their icons on the wall. All this has been misappropriated from Hinduism, actually. In their original religion, that it does not have any place for all of that, because in Islam, you don't even worship, right? You're not supposed to worship. So then why are you going and offering flowers, and why are you going and praying to that person in the dargah? So all these things have actually been taken from Hinduism, and they've been given a color of that particular religion. So I'm sure there will be a mass of people who will be arguing this point, but I'm very sure what I'm talking about. So in all these places, you don't have to do anything. If you go in a temple also, at least you'll have to ring a bell. At least you'll have to, do some puja to the deity. Your participation is required, whatever way it may be. In all these other religions, you are there, you are not there, it doesn't matter. You're just one person sitting in the audience. You're just the audience, right? In Hinduism, you are a participant. You're not the audience. Each life is a participant in the cosmos.
Right.
In other religions, you are just an audience. So it's always easy to, it's like going and watching a cricket match and coming back. Ask them, is there any difference? If India wins in a cricket match, they feel happy. It's the same. It's probably much better than going to church. So it's not a religion in that sense, right? It's if you just temporarily forgetting your problems is not spirituality, and it's not religion. So this is just something they forget, and they start carrying hatred for Hinduism because they blame Hinduism for their problems, for not solving their problems. Whereas the problem is they've never actually practiced Hinduism, right? So I had actually made a video on this also for the Disillusioned Hindu, where this is what I talk about, that they don't practice anything in Hinduism, and then they blame Hinduism for all their problems. So that is why they don't want to accept that anything good ever came out of Hinduism. It's a blanket no, right? The people are not able to perceive in in the normal realistic way. It's a binary logic. Either it's all good or it's all bad. So Hinduism is all bad, even if they had something good from it. So I've met a lot of these people. So
100%. And I think what you said about like mental laziness is something that rings very true. Is because with a lot of these, sort of revealed religions or the revealed philosophy, it's something that has been revealed to this one individual, and it will never be revealed to anybody else, right? So immediately you have lost all power. You have no power in this equation. There's only that one gentleman that has the power, and then you have to live your lives based on what he has told you, based upon his or her revelation, whatever that the case might be. However, in Hinduism, it is different because it's, I feel like at the crux of it, if you, from the old philosophy, I mean, I don't know if a lot of the sort of newer philosophy talks about it, but what the crux of the matter is that it's a process of self-discovery. It's a process of finding your own place in the Brahman, in the Purusha, whatever you might call it, finding your place in the cosmos and realizing what your place is and getting there. And realizing your place and getting there requires a lot of work, requires a lot of meditation, requires a lot of different sorts of forms of yoga. And so that is work that you have to put in. It's not just that you have to sit there. Somebody comes around and says, look, son or daughter, this is what you have to believe. And this is the ultimate truth. And you say, okay, theek hai, kaam ho gaya. And then you have to just get on with your life. So it's something that you have to keep working on your entire lives. And for some people, it's, for some people, they just like to be told what to do. A lot of the people tend to be followers, blind followers, and they just like being told what to do. So I feel like that's a big difference as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. And like you were saying, it's about self-inquiry. So like, they dropped that whole idea, that whole habit of inquiry itself. Forget about self-inquiry. Like, self-inquiry is a very refined thing where you are asking, where did this thought of mine come from? Why am I thinking about this now? Why is this person's behavior affecting me? What does the Ishopanishad say? Like, Ishopanishad says this. So am I really following what the Ishopanishad says? That is the process of self-inquiry. Forget about self-inquiry. They don't do any inquiry itself. Like if the media is going on blaring about, so-and-so is this way, your Ishopanishad is crap, it is this, it is that. They're just like, okay, yeah, sure. They'll never bother to even pick up. Ishopanishad has 18 verses. But they won't bother to even pick up the Ishopanishad. If you do one Google search, you'll get it. It's not that difficult. Even if you read the corrupt translation, I've been going on and on about, you should not read corrupt translation. But even if you read some of the, German or British translations, even then you will be able to at least understand some part of it. Like a whole lot of it will be wrong. So even if I discount that factor that you read a wrong translation, even the wrong translations still have something good in them, because they cannot corrupt everything. They don't have the intelligence even to corrupt everything, because some parts are just so obviously good that you can't distort it beyond a certain point. So that inquiry itself is missing, where people don't question what they're told. And many of the so-called Hindu gurus nowadays, they don't bother to revive this knowledge, and they just start following that same idea or that philosophy of just smile a little, spread a little joy, do a little bit of good, do a little social service, you'll be very happy, don't be angry. So my question for all these gurus used to be when I was younger, that if I was already able to do all that, why will I need you? Like, these are societal qualities which you're telling me, which everyone says: be happy, smile a little bit, don't be angry. If I really knew how to do all that, what will I need you for? Right? So I never connected with that kind of a logic where people just come and start giving me a set of do's and don'ts. Like, just tell me how to do it. If you don't have the answer, say, I don't have the answer for this, right? That's being authentic. So if you ask me something today, which I don't have an answer for, I'll just tell you, okay, I don't know this. So like I'll refer or I'll check and then I'll get back to you. But they don't do that. They just come and start giving their own ideas and without any basis. And when people question them, they don't bother to answer, or they don't want to answer them. So this is also a reason why people have started buying into this, the pseudo spirituality or this new age spirituality, which is completely disconnected from Hinduism. So it starts when the moment you disconnect your roots from Hinduism, you start becoming more and more like an Abrahamic religion, which is just a set of, it's just a set of do's and don'ts in a book, right? So that's also the reason why a lot of these people and the followers of these so-called gurus eventually take that same route. They just start taking everything. I've seen many such followers. You tell them to do something, like, they're so much in the habit of just smile a little, spread a little peace. They can't face any conflict. Whenever they are in a conflict, they don't know what to do. And if you tell them, go and do this program, do this kriya, do this meditation, they won't do it. You tell them 5 times, they will not do it, because it is that same mental laziness, that church going attitude. I just go and spend 15 minutes in the church and I come back. I don't have to do it. Yeah. So it's that same laziness which does not inquire anything, which does not inquire, why do I need to smile? I'm not feeling like smiling, right? So that even a lot of people, when they do start inquiring, they don't start inquiring themselves. They start inquiring only in Hinduism without the purpose of finding an answer. So if in Hinduism, if you actually use that inquiries genuinely, sincerely, you will arrive at the truth. Right? I've been in these kind of debates with many of my atheist friends, or at least who were friends. Now I don't know if they still consider me as friends. But even all those atheist friends, if I really start drilling them down to, okay, what they really believe, and what is it do you think is keeping the world alive? And what is it that keeping you alive? What is it that makes you different from a dead body? What is it, right? Then eventually they have to accept that there is something which they cannot explain, they cannot understand, they don't have any answer for. I'm like, that is Brahman, right? Or that is Atman, not exactly Brahman, but that is your Atman. That is the consciousness in you, which is the same consciousness running in everything else. And they take a very long time to digest it. Eventually they just forget about it. They don't want to think about it, because that changes their entire worldview. Their entire worldview is based on no consciousness. Everything is dead according to them, like themselves. So that is why because when they start doing this, it requires your worldview to change, right? And the problems they have is because of their worldview. They don't understand that if their worldview changes, the problems they have will be different.
Right.
They will have good problems. They will not have bad problems. They will not have the problems of, like, having cancer, maybe. They will have the problems of having a lot of good people around them. You don't have enough time to be with them.
Right.
The problems, you always have problems. It's a question of what type of a problem you're having, right? So they don't understand that their worldview changing is the solution for their lives. They just don't want to change their worldview, because they've put in so much of themselves into arriving at that worldview of denying everything, that it changes their whole, it shakes them to the core to change their worldview. And Hinduism will always change your worldview. Hinduism is constant change, right? The very first words of the very first Upanishad says, change established on change.
Right.
Right? So it says that the entire world is changed. It is change square, change to the power of change. Even what is perceiving the change is changing. So that is the very first thing you need to understand and accept if you're going to be a part of Hinduism. But these people don't want change. So they just, they just keep going on with whatever people are saying. They don't want to accept any inquiry as a part of the routine.
It's interesting what you say about change, because it's so true. Because even if we look at ourselves sort of physiologically, our cells are always replacing themselves. So, in fact, our bodies and our skin cells are replacing themselves, and our bodies are pretty much kind of changing every single day as
Exactly.
well. Our entire physiology changes over the course of our lives. And I was reading this very interesting. I was listening to a podcast actually, and there was this theoretical physicist there, and he was talking about how the universe is about 70 to 75% of this thing called dark energy, and dark energy is something that is prevalent inside every single thing within the universe. It's inside everybody, and when you listen to it, it's now again, I'm not saying that this and like Hindu philosophy is obviously connected. It's the exact same thing, because I don't really know if it is. The more I study, the more I meditate, the more I might realize so. At the moment, I don't know. But when you listen to it, when you listen to those theories of kind of theoretical physics, when you listen to the theories of Hinduism, that, the Brahman or whatever we call God is something that is prevalent in the entire universe, and it is also prevalent in every single living being. It is inside all of us as well, and we are all part of it. And our goal in sort of life is to be aware enough or become aware enough that we can then go rejoin that universe and be free of dying and coming back, and dying and coming back, and we can be free of it eventually. So when you look at these things, and when you look at certain, and you have the third law of thermodynamics, like energy cannot be destroyed; it can only be shifted from one place to another. And it's a very similar thing that you say about Atman, that Atman cannot be destroyed. It only moves. It only shifts to another vehicle, or it becomes part of the universe again. So you can't really destroy it, which is, one of the most famous passages from the Gita. And so when you read things like that, it's very interesting. It's such an interesting thing. But what we do is generally, as a civilization, at least today, maybe before the British came around, it was better. But at least today, we don't make those connections. We hardly market it like that. And that's where I think somebody like you becomes very interesting to talk to, because this is something that you worked in. And this is something that I've long held is a massive problem with Hinduism, that they just, maybe some people do, but I think a vast majority of proponents of Hinduism don't know how to really promote it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like one of the reasons why I really started talking a whole lot more on Hinduism was because I felt like the overall branding of Hinduism and Hindutva was a big mess, right? So it's like people only think of Hinduism as these people who wear bhagwa, like, saffron, and carry
Right.
swords and have big tilaks on their heads, and, who go and who take out processions, and that's just a general principle or guiding principle people use as defining Hindutva: militant, extremist.
Right.
You pick up any international media article, and that's like, right. So there are two aspects of it. Of course, these are peddled agendas. These are this is not a coincidence. This is done on purpose, right? So there are several agents who have on purpose branded Hinduism as Hindutva, because when you paint it as Hindutva, obviously people will not have any charm towards it. They will see it as something to stay away from. You keep an arm's length from. That is the first thing. And the second thing is that the people who honestly do practice Hinduism, they have not been able to undo this damage for whatever number of reasons. And that branding right now is like there are 100 voices all saying something, but there is no one clear message which people are able to get out of it. And all these 100 voices are not loud enough to make up for all the noise on the mainstream media. Anytime any anytime I tune into any debate on any media channel, I'm like, oh God, why
did
I
do
do?
Shouting match.
It's like violence on my ears. Like, it's like I'm doing something wrong to my ears and my eyes. Like, I need to first of all tone it down, and secondly, I can't make any sense of it. And the people who want to abuse Hinduism or even the practices of Hinduism, they are so loud and they keep shouting over again, even if somebody has already proved them wrong. So it's not a logical discussion at all. It's just a question of who can shout more, right? And the people who are making a logical argument are not really, able to make their point unless they shout. And the moment you start shouting, you can't talk about these kind of subtle things, right? How will you explain divinity? How will you explain God? How will you explain enlightenment to somebody by shouting? You can't do that. So I feel like, the overall branding, the overall idea of Hinduism has become completely different from whatever is the basic tenet, basic core idea, principle of Hinduism. There are three core ideas of Hinduism. One is you are divine. Everything is divine. You exist in everything. Everything exists in you, right? Second is the theory of karma, that, you keep accumulating and spending karma, and you keep doing that until your karmic balance becomes zero. And the third is, of course, the theory of reincarnation, that you take many, many births and you keep evolving with every birth. And eventually you merge with the cosmos, you become one with the divine, with the conscious energy, cosmic consciousness. Now, the way Hinduism is taught to people, or the way people learn about Hinduism, is completely different from this. The basic spiritual aspect of Hinduism, which is the core of Hinduism, which was the basic idea behind everything in Hinduism, is completely lost. Now, you're basically selling the skeleton of Hinduism. You're not really selling Hinduism if you remove this aspect of Hinduism from it. So, okay, you're doing puja, you're doing yoga, you're doing this, you're doing that. Even if you're taking a bath as per agamas, why are you doing that? It is only and only to align yourself with the truth that you are divine. Unless you remember that you are divine, what you're doing does not add up. Because in Hinduism, the sankalpa, the context from which you do something, is really important. That decides the outcome of the action. See, now a terrorist also has a knife, and a surgeon also has a knife. What is the difference between the two, right? The difference is the context. A surgeon picks up a knife to save a life. A terrorist picks up a knife to take a life, right? So in the cosmos, the context, the intention, sometimes you may shout at somebody because they're doing something stupid which will hurt them. That's what a mother does with her child, right? Or sometimes you may shout at somebody to insult them. So your context is different completely. It's the action alone cannot be measured as good or bad or right or wrong or divine or asuri, right? It is the context of action which decides whether what outcome you're going to get from the action, and whether you will be earning karma from it or you will be expending karma from it. So this whole idea of context of action itself is forgotten. And that idea, whether you're doing puja, so even when you do puja, as per the Upanishads, we say soham asmi. Even when I'm praying, I'm you. So just because I'm praying, it is not that Abrahamic religions kind of praying. When we pray in Hinduism, we pray to remind ourselves that, oh, the God who I admire so much, who I love so much, who I am, who I want to emulate so much, I already am you, right? It is like, it is to lift yourself up. It is not to put you down. In Abrahamic religions, you have to sort of apologize and, confess your whatever. But in Hinduism, it is like, even when you're praying. So see, the whole science of prayer is that, when you worship, when you do puja, the qualities of the God with whom you are related, the more and more you remember those qualities, the more and more those qualities will get awakened in you. Because we say that I am you. So, when I am Shiva, like my Aradhya is Shiva. So I will feel more and more inspired to be more like Shiva mentally. And that whole action will awaken those qualities in me. If you are all constantly in the space of Shiva. But people, even the many living, practicing Hindus of today who are Hindus, they've forgotten that. They just go and start giving their wish list to God, which is not wrong. But the problem is they're just giving it as, I am powerless, you only have all the power, which is wrong. The whole idea of Hinduism is to remind you that you are not powerless. You are never powerless. You just started believing you are powerless for some stupid reason. And you don't need to feel powerless. right? So that whole spiritual aspect of Hindutva or Hinduism has completely been crushed, and it is, people don't even remember it nowadays. And that means to be integrated into the mainstream dialogue. So even when we are and like I was just mentioning, that branding is eventually nothing but how people perceive you. It is not a marketing campaign. It is not putting up some banners or some graphics or something like that. Marketing is well, okay, but branding is something which people form their opinions on, right? Branding is basically what general masses perceive you as. So that is going to become stable and shift more and more towards these truths when this messaging is consistently brought out. So I see that there's a clear separation. There are these scholars and these people who have their heads in the Vedas, who are continuously talking about the spiritual truths. And then there are a completely separate group of those so-called Hindu activists who are only taking up the matters of now, the news, current news, the political news. And yes, that is needed. I'm not saying that's not needed. That is also needed because there is so much crass going on in the political scenario also. But the problem is that these two are separate. So most people, because of the sensational aspect of it, because of the topical aspect of it, most people only listen to the current news. And what is the Hindu aspect of the news? They are doing a good job in terms of trying to undo the damage done by the mainstream media, but that is only disaster management. That is not inspiring by itself, right? To inspire people, you need to give them something positive, something true. Like, the truth always lifts you up, right? That disaster management cannot be our only way of branding ourselves. We are basically, it's like we are always in the operation theater. Like, not today one person has fallen down and we are doing an operation Kathua. Then we are next doing an operation Hanuman 2.0. Then we are doing an operation something, right? And it's like these operations which they keep giving us. Basically, we are following their agenda. We don't have any agenda of our own. That's what the mainstream voice sounds like, right? So that Operation Kathua and Operation Hanuman 2.0 does need to go on, but we also need to at the same time remember and remind people of why is Hanuman so important as a symbol of devotion. And just the narrative itself needs to be more and more inclusive of the spiritual, of the divine aspects of Hinduism, which people have forgotten. And unfortunately, the problem is that a lot of people are shy to talk about it. They feel like, like people, you go and you start talking about this in a party and let's see the response. So that's the kind of shyness which people have in talking about these kind of concepts. But we need to drop that shyness. Like, you can't be shy to pick up a sword when the war is already going on. Right? That's the kind of shyness.
I don't know if you've ever been to Delhi University, or anybody, or I don't know if you studied at Delhi University, but the Delhi University is very, very much like that. So it's obviously Delhi College, a lot of people from Delhi, a lot of people from South Delhi, a lot of people from Gurgaon, and the cool crowd's always hanging out there. I went to Hindu college, and so I had St. Stephen's right across the street from me. So I knew a lot of people. Obviously, I had a lot of friends in Hindu. I knew a lot of people in St. Stephen's as well. And, every time sometimes we'd go to parties, sometimes we'd just sit outside and just talk. And every time there was a conversation, and every single conversation was, well, especially from the Stephen's crowd, the conversations were often political. And in political conversations, it was always like, oh, these Hindus, man, they're the ones ruining the country because they're such a backward people. And I said, why are they such a backward people? I mean, you're a Hindu. Are you a backward person? He said, well, yeah, I'm a Hindu by birth, but, I don't really do anything Hindu. I said, okay, well, I'm a Hindu. I was born a Hindu, and, I might not go to a temple every single day, but I definitely identify as a Hindu. Do you think I'm a backward person? And then they're like, well, if you believe that you're a Hindu and if you identify as a Hindu, then there's probably something wrong. And the level of shunning that happens in liberal circles, and especially, these Delhi University sort of liberal circles, when you talk about being a Hindu, or worse, being a practicing Hindu. It's just absolutely insane. And I do think that you're so right about creating a narrative rather than chasing a narrative, which is important, in its own way, because there's so much false narratives out there and there's so much false information out there that it's very important to counter, because those things matter today. But at the same time, those are short-term things. In the long term, we need a narrative shift. And that sort of brings me to the question, how do we do it? How do we go about creating that narrative shift?
So if you search for Hinduism, I'll tell you how I picked up the domain Hinduism.news.
Right.
I picked up Hinduism news and I just did a Google search. I'm a marketing SEO person. And the first 2 search engine pages was just all complete cross. And I was like, oh God, this needs a shift. Right? This cannot go on.
Yeah.
And I know. So see, the problem is that a lot of Hindus work with a short-term plan. That itself is a problem. They don't have any long-term plans or vision. I'm not saying all, but many. Okay. And so when I started with Hinduism news, I was very clear this is something for the rest of my life. It is not something I'm planning for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. This is something which is going to go on for the rest of my life. It can grow at whatever pace it grows. I'm not in a huge rush to suddenly amass 1 lakh followers. I don't care, because for me, each person who listens to me is a person. It's not a number, right?
And it's about the message that you're trying to give out, right?
Right. And see, there may be a lot of people who are not interested in what I'm saying, because they're that leftist crowd. So I don't want to amass that kind of a crowd. I want people who genuinely do want to learn Hinduism. So see, the thing is, if we really have a long-term plan of what we want to do, and we start doing even every small action aligned with that plan, that problem is solved right there. Because like I was saying, this branding is not something which is going to change in a day or even in a year, or maybe not even in 5 years. But maybe in 5 years, we can start seeing some difference, right? We can start seeing some difference. We've already started seeing some difference because of the presence of some really good leaders like Rajiv Malhotra, like Subramanian Swamy. They have made a colossal effort in changing that narrative. But you see, these people have been around for so long. In the beginning, when they started, they had the same problems as what we are discussing now. And at that time, even poor people were aware of it. So the problem can be solved by having a long-term plan and sticking to it, not just like, using it as some post-it stuck on your fridge, right? It needs to be something which is drilled into your heart, right? Which is the context, like I was saying. The context needs to be the same. So I try to see that is true for what I do. Like, irrespective of what I'm talking about, I try to always bring it back to that spiritual aspect of Hinduism and bringing it back to the Shastras and the authentic meaning of the Shastras. So I know I sound a lot of repetitive sometimes, but people don't listen anyway, right? So it's always good to repeat, because only 20% of what you say actually goes inside people's brains. So you have to keep repeating until the whole 100% goes in, which means you repeat it at least 10 times, if not more. So that repetition is important, because we think everybody is listening everything we say, which is not true, right? And we need to make it cool. The thing is, we have not been able to make it cool till now. Hinduism needs to be cool, and it is cool, right? Look at the people who are really living as Hindus and how much cooler the lives are, how much less messed up the lives are. And if you just tell people that, if I just tell somebody I have a problem, I have a fever, or if I have a stomach upset, I can just scan my own body and heal my own self within a day. That's cool, right? It's not something any other leftist malcontent mouthpiece can do. So,
and not just that, like, think about it this way: if women in America, there's Muslim women in America that have made wearing a hijab cool, because they have this National Hijab Day here, where they go around in universities and they make people wear the hijab, and they say, look how nice that feels. If people can make wearing a hijab one of the most oppressive symbols on the planet, if you can make wearing a hijab cool, I think we can make, being a Hindu cool as well.
Exactly. So we need to work a lot on making Hinduism cool, and support people who are doing that. Support many people. There are so many artists. Like, if you see any artist of any Madhubani painting, on any other kind of paintings, they're like poor. Yeah, I see one behind. I have one, but I've not hung it up on the wall.
Yeah, so I'm from Bihar, so I always represent my home state.
Oh, okay. So there's like so much creative work, but these people are not given the same kind of respect, the same kind of accolades as all these other leftist modern artists, right? So I'm a modern artist, but you know, I feel that modern art is given sometimes more respect than it deserves, and sometimes the traditional arts are given far lesser respect than what they deserve. So I was really happy to see Mr. Modi buying a Madhubani painting in Singapore, and I wanted to suggest to him that please do something for the artists of India also, right? Because those same artists, we should ask how much that original artist of that painting got as the money for his work versus whatever he paid in Singapore, right? So these artists need, and that financial support is necessary because in the end, there is a very big economic aspect to it. These leftist malcontents have huge funding from sources which I prefer not to mention. So this funds flowing in from everywhere, from all directions, all the 16 directions. So there's this financial aspect is also important, and the creative aspect is also important. So Hinduism has creativity in everything, be it cooking, be it dressing, be it your how you want to shape your own body, right? Yoga gives you the freedom to do that. In terms of what Hinduism gives you, so many options for everything, and that is what makes it cool, right? So even if we go by the very definition of these liberals, like freedom of choices, Hinduism gives you so many choices. So you have so many ways. There are so many sects. There are so many sampradayas. If you don't like Shiva, you like Ganesha, you can worship Ganesha. You don't like Ganesha, you like Hanuman, you can worship Hanuman. So we are so rich. We are so wealthy in everything. We have so much to offer somebody, whereas any other religion only has one God and one book. We have so many books. You don't like this book, you pick this one. You don't like Ishopanishad, it's too difficult for you. You pick a Bhagavad Gita, it's so juicy, right? Or you can just learn from Mahabharata itself, even if you're not picking up a scripture. So that thing needs to be branded as cool in terms of what we share with people in all the different formats, be it social media, be it talks, be it our other creative messaging somewhere, podcasts, things like that. So a lot of Hindus have forgotten that. And again, always tying it back to why are we so creative, why are we so cool? Because of our spiritual strength. So in Hinduism, I think it is Ramakrishna somewhere who says, or no, I think it's Vivekananda, who says that even if we want wealth, we just sit under the tree and we create the intention and we create the space for the cosmos to support us with wealth, and people come and shower wealth on us. Right? So we have a technique, we have a vidhi for everything, and it is all there. So it's so cool that you have an answer for everything, which you ask a Christian how to earn wealth, and I'm not happy you like the answer. So because Christianity believes in poverty, right? They take pride in poverty, whereas in Hinduism, we take pride in our richness. So, and this actually, I forgot to mention this. This is this aspect where people think that spirituality and material richness are mutually exclusive. Is complete BS. Okay, because the more spiritual you become, the more you start harnessing that same cosmic energy, that same abundance, which will shower you with wealth. Of course, it takes work. It may not happen overnight. It may or may not happen overnight. But depending on how much work you put into it, tapasya, jisko bolte hain. So depending on how much you really try to tune yourself into the basic principles of manifesting wealth, you can really manifest wealth in a way which is sustainable, which supports you for what you want, not working on somebody else's terms, working on your terms, and doing what you want on the time in which you want, and doing whatever else you want to do in your life, like being your own boss, basically, right? So Hinduism gives you the freedom and power to do that, and tells you how to do that, encourages you to do that. Which other religion does that, right? So that is something which people don't know, maybe because they've not learned, they've not been taught how to do that. But thankfully, my guru has taught us how to do that. And this whole idea, this myth that spirituality and materialism are mutually exclusive needs to be busted. And we have so many examples of people who are spiritual who were very rich. But the problem is are shy of their spiritual aspect of their lives. They don't talk about it. So we don't know that this person who we see as, an icon of success is successful because they're deeply spiritual. People don't talk about it.
That's
so
true.
that shyness needs to be dropped. Many of these multi-billionaires, they are very spiritual. They don't fail in doing the daily puja. They don't fail in they're basically consulting their astrologers. Even if you go to Varanasi, any shop, they will not open the shop before finishing their puja, right? And there are many successful businessmen.
Right.
Like any successful businessman will always be very particular about their puja, their daily puja,
Right.
and they will worship Devi Lakshmi, and they will be very, very authentic with all the rituals of Devi Lakshmi. And there's nothing to be shy or embarrassed about. Like, you want Lakshmi, you worship Lakshmi. It's as simple as that, right?
Right.
Why will you not do it?
Right.
But people start making jokes. Oh, so and so is worshiping Lakshmi because they want wealth, right? So what? I should worship you or what? I mean,
Right.
who will I worship if I want wealth? I will worship the goddess of wealth, right? So these jokes need to die out, right? So that messaging of, I'm so cool, at least I have a goddess to worship if I want wealth. You don't even
Right.
have that. So that pride and that coolness needs to be consistent in all our messaging, which is not.
I think what's so interesting about that as well, because you're so right about the shyness part, is because a lot of Hindus I've seen often shy away, or kind of walk away from saying that yes, I'm a Hindu and I'm very proud to be that way, because you'll meet a lot of Christians who will say that, okay, I'm an evangelical Christian and I'm a proud evangelical Christian. And evangelical Christian is like even one more step above regular Christian, because an evangelical Christian believes that anybody who does not believe in Christ and that this is the only way you can be saved is a bad person, is definitely going to go to hell if he doesn't convert to Christianity. I mean, that's what an evangelical Christian believes. So there are people out there that are proudly proclaiming that they're evangelical Christians, and there are people out there who say, I'm a proud Muslim, where again, nothing wrong with being a Muslim, but the ideology does say that if you don't believe exactly what I believe, that makes you not a good person, essentially.
Yeah.
So there are people who are out there proudly claiming to be that way, and there are Hindus here that are saying, well, I believe in a philosophy which says that even that there are 100,000 different ways to get to the Almighty, and all different ways, as long as you can get to the Almighty, are fine. And if you don't believe in this one way, then you go this one way. And it is such a sort of democratic system of belief. But despite having the most democratic system of belief, at least in theory, having such a democratic system of beliefs, you still run away from it. You still run away from it. And that's what drives me up a wall sometimes, because I'm just like, just think about it. Think about where you are, where your philosophy is, and think about the other philosophies. Think how much pride they take in it, despite knowing all the drawbacks of it. And think how little pride you take in yours. So I think that's something important as well. And coming to the education part of it, you were talking that people need to educate themselves, and people are not as educated as they need to be, particularly when it comes to Hindus and their own culture. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that, okay, Muslims, if they want to know everything about Islam, all they need to do is pick up the Quran and read it, and they'll know what they need to know. Christians, if they need to know everything about Christianity, all they need to do, pick up the Bible, read it, they'll know everything they need to know. But with Hindus, because there is such a diversity of thought, and because there is such a plethora of information available, I think the question would be, if not that we need to know everything, but if we want to know something, important to get us on our way, where does one start? Or what is the one or two or three books that you would say, start with this, and this will give you a very good headspace? What would you recommend?
See, I would, in this list, the thing is, in Hinduism, each book has its own place. So I will give you the list, but I do want to put this on record that one book is not replaceable with the other book.
100%.
So you can't replace the Agamas with the Upanishads. You can't replace the Upanishads with the Bhagavad Gita, right? Because each book has so much beauty. Because see, in Hinduism, the books were not written as what we understand as books. This is something which is very important, which even people who have studied these books don't know. So the books were not written as one author, me writing some book. So these books were written by rishis who had great siddhis, who had great shaktis, and who were in that space of entanglement with that same god or that same divinity. They were enlightened rishis. They were not just any scholar or somebody, right? They were people who were already enlightened and who could directly download the cosmic truths from the cosmos. So this is not something which is their own experience which they have written. The Puranas are their, have their own place, and Smritis have their own place. But things like Upanishads, things like Bhagavad Gita, things like Agama, things like Vijnana Bhairav Tantra, things like Manusmriti, they are written from an enlightened space. So it is not one person's view. That person has not even identified himself in many books, except for maybe Bhagavad Gita. So if you see, many of these scriptures, they are aparushya. They don't have any author. Pick up Ishopanishad. It does not give any author name, right? Because that person has no sense of identity when he is writing. He is completely in that samadhi space, and he is just scribing whatever the cosmos is revealing to him. So because these are the direct revelations of the cosmos revealing itself to you, you cannot replace one with the other, basically.
And the other thing I think also is, sorry to cut you off, but the other thing is also, I feel like that with the Quran and sort of the Bible, it's the word of one man
Right.
who said that he received it from God. So it's the word of one man. I know it's been written by different people, but at the end of the day, it's the word of one guy. But with a lot of Hindu texts, the thing is that it's not the word of one person. All these texts have been written by many, 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 many teachers, many, many, many yogis and gurus over centuries and over millennia even. So that's what gives these books, and that's what gives these pieces of text the character that it does. Because it's not that, okay, this guy came to us one day in the afternoon after lunchtime and he said, Dekho bhai, I've had this contact, so please write this down. So it's very different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like some of these leftists getting the Booker Awards.
Yeah.
The Hindu scriptures were not written like that. Maybe their books were written like that. So, you cannot replace it, because see, I have read the Upanishads, I've read Bhagavad Gita, but even now when I read Manusmriti, it's a completely new revelation to me. Even now when I read Agamas, so I have read the Kamika Agama also to a very good extent. So each one of them has something new in it, right? And you think, how is it possible that I've read about the cosmic truths and everything, and then there is something new which is expressed, or some subtler aspect of it. So there is a lot of overlap between Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads in terms of the truths. But
sorry, just one second. I'm getting a lot of messages on the chat. So I am reading your chats, guys. I am making sure to read your chats. Like I said, I will try and take your questions sort of towards the end of our conversation, so in the last 20 minutes. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. I just don't want to disturb Arti too much while she's talking. So put your questions down. I'm writing them down here as well, and I will put them to her towards the end of the chat. So that's for Aloha Maloha. So just make sure. All right. Sorry, Arti, carry on.
No problem. So, which is why I would really encourage Hindus to pick up a book as per what they like, right? Because your emotional connection is important. So if you are a yoga teacher, if you're a yogi, I would suggest you read the Gheran Samhita, and you read, some of the yoga Upanishads. There's the Yoga Chudamani Upanishad, which I read, which I think is very beautiful. Then there is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So there are these specific yoga texts which every yoga teacher should read, apart from the Yoga Sutras. So the Yoga Sutras have their own place, but in Yoga Sutras, they don't actually talk about the yoga kriyas. The Patanjali has given a very beautiful understanding of what is yoga, right? What is that communion? And what are the different aspects of it, the different modifications of the mind. And it's a more of an intellectual understanding. But if you read these authentic yogic texts, then you really understand the authentic yoga as was designed in Hinduism. not designed by yoga teachers in the US, right? So every yoga teacher should at least read these texts. I'll just repeat, Ghiran Samhita, there's Yoga Shikha Upanishad, I think, but the one I have read is Yoga Churamani Upanishad and the Hat Yog Pradipika. So there are like hundreds of such yogic texts. There are some books which are not so easily available, but these three are easily available. So I would suggest these.
So for me, for example, let's say that I've been trying to learn how to meditate recently. So I've been doing a little bit of that. I haven't done it for very long, so in no ways I'm some great seer or anything. But I've only done it for like 2 or 3 weeks so far. It's been going good. But for somebody who's willing to, or who's meaning to learn meditation, and the reason I pick up meditation and like you picked up yoga in particular is because those two things hold so much power. Because those two things are things that have come from India, more or less, and those are things that are in such great demand in the West, not just in terms of, economy-wise, but just in terms of what it provides to a lot of people. And what I never want to see is have yoga and meditation be divorced from Hinduism, particularly in the West. So that's something that I always want to make sure I keep talking about is meditation and Hinduism and the link between the two. So if somebody wants to know more about or read more about meditation, do you have any recommendations for that?
See, the thing is that the word meditation as such doesn't occur in Hinduism. Right. What occurs is dhyan.
Right.
So in Hinduism, dhyan was not the same as what is defined as meditation in the Western world and now also in the Indian world. Meditation comes from Buddhism. Right. That is also a very recent one. It is not exactly as what Buddha himself defined, right? So what we practice as meditation today is actually taken from Buddhism, not originally from Hinduism, original Hinduism. What is originally from Hinduism is dhyan, which is also given in a lot of detail in the same yogic test. So like you were saying, yoga and meditation go hand in hand. They're not separate. But in dhyan, what you really do is you sit with yourself, you turn your attention inwards, and you sit with the truth, the cosmic truth, and you contemplate on that, and you try to make it a part of your life. So, for example, you understand, okay, everything is consciousness, right? So that means even the laptop I'm touching right now is consciousness. That means even this headphone has consciousness in it. It means this table also has consciousness. It means even that other person who was wrong to me the other day, even that person is eventually the same manifestation of that same consciousness.
Right.
Right. So in Hinduism, meditation is not really a separate aspect compared with, what vis-a-vis other religions teach. So in Hinduism, meditation is dhyan. It is not a separate action. It is just sitting with yourself. And whatever is the most burning, what I would suggest is whatever is the most burning issue in your life, try to analyze that. Yeah, Hindi mein ek word hota hai, parakho. Right?
Yes.
Usko parakhiye aap, right? Because parakho cannot be really translated as analyze. I have to use analyze because there is no better word in English. But you analyze that from the lens of the cosmic truths, because meditation itself is becoming an escape, just like a lot of other things, which people do. So it is not that vipassana kind of meditation. So I have done the silent fast also, by the way, out of my own motivation for a few days. And
oops. Arti, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, you dropped off for a bit there, but you're back.
Yeah, so I think what I was sharing was maybe too much for the bandwidth to handle.
Possibly. It was heavy stuff.
Right. So I would recommend that, for doing meditation, you first sit with the Upanishads and do it in a sequence, in the same sequence in which it is given. The Muktikopanishad gives the sequence of the Upanishads. The first 12 is the one which are, which contain most of the essence of it. like I said, books cannot be replaced with each other. But if you don't have time, you only want to read some, then the first 12, and start with the first 3 at least the Ishavasya Upanishad, Kenopanishad, Kathopanishad. So these 3 give you at least the most deep, subtle, and basic understandings of life and death. Death is also important because people just think, okay, yeah, death is a change of clothes. But there are many, many subtleties in which Yamadharma himself has revealed, right? So that whole story is very beautiful of how Nachiket, why he goes to Yamdharma, how he sits there without food and water for 3 days. And then the servant of Yamdharma comes and says to Yama that, oh, this Brahmin is sitting for 3 days without food and water. The whole world is burning. This whole mansion is going to burn. You go and please give him boons, right? So pacify this guy. And it's worth noting that he is referred to as a Brahmin, but he was the prince. He was a prince. He was the son of a Kshatriya, right? So that whole story of how Yamadharma, with so much love, so much appreciation, so much admiration for this little boy, he reveals the whole truth and science of death, birth, to this little boy. So it's very, very interesting to read these kind of revelations which have been given directly. Yama is the god of death in Hinduism. Right. So to hear that truth directly from him is a completely different experience. If you really learn it with a lot of seeking, with a lot of sincerity. So anyone who is interested in meditation, I would suggest you pick up at least the first 3 Upanishads, and if you can, the first 12 Upanishads, and if you can, then whichever else you want to. You can refer to the sequence in the Muktiko Upanishad. Muktiko Upanishad gives the names in the right sequence in which it's supposed to be delivered, to have been delivered. And apart from that, I think every Hindu should read the Bhagavad Gita. And at least we should be aware of what is the Bhagavad Gita, for the simple reason that Bhagavad Gita is the most popular Hindu text. And because it is the most popular, it is also the most often quoted, most often cited, and it is also the most often misrepresented and misquoted. So unless you actually read Bhagavad Gita, you will not know what is there, where is it, which verse, what. So if somebody comes and misquotes Bhagavad Gita to me, I would actually go and dig out. I would ask that person which verse, which chapter, which is a question I don't even hear people asking. Like, this person has said this in the Bhagavad Gita. Arey bhai, kahan bola hai? Give a reference, right? This chapter, this verse, because you see, whenever I refer to any particular thing from any particular scripture, I always give the verse, the chapter number, the verse number, the whole thing, along with the translation, and if possible in Devanagari and English script both. So it should not be, we can't be talking in the air all the time, right? Like hawa mein baatein nahi kar sakte.
Right.
So that is why it is important for Hindus to really, really know Bhagavad Gita themselves rather than hearing it from all these leftist people, because they know that Bhagavad Gita is a very popular text. So they have made the effort to read it, but Hindus have not made the effort to read it. So apart from other things, and Bhagavad Gita, you don't have to digest the whole thing at one go. You read, even if you read one verse, one day, even that will make a difference. So there's one more thing I wanted to mention while we're on the topic, that so it's not just about reading the whole book. Reading the whole book is great, but I just wanted to say, even if you read and if you really contemplate on, if you really introspect on even just one verse of one book, you will have a daily different experience of that day itself. So it's not like you have to, don't read it like reading a novel. Hindu scriptures are not meant to be read like you read a novel. And they're not meant to be read like how you read books for research, that you just want to use it to reference it somewhere or something like that. It's not meant to be read like that. It is literally like soaking in the most sweetest aspects of God himself, right? It is like God revealing himself to you. Why will you want to rush through it? If you're watching your favorite movie, you don't rush through it, right? Jaldi karke khatam kar diya. It's not read like that. Like I watched Lord of the Rings so many times, and every time I watch it, I watch it with that same relish, right? Because I relish it. So that is how Hindu scriptures are supposed to be read. You read it. Don't worry about finishing the whole thing jaldi. No, there's no hurry, right? You are eternal, right? So there is no hurry to finish it. take one verse and really think over it. Think over what it means. Then you will have questions. You will have a lot of questions. Then go to the next verse, because maybe the next verse will already answer your questions.
Right.
So that is how these books are written. The questions you come up with in one verse are usually answered in the next verse itself. So take your time and relish whatever you're doing and contemplate on it. You will automatically start being in meditation. So meditation is a space to be and not an action to be done as such in Hinduism. The more and more you do this, you will automatically find yourself in a lower TPS. Thoughts per second will automatically come down. Your dilemmas will automatically come down. So having a lot of thoughts basically means you have a lot of dilemmas. You have a lot of unanswered questions. You have a lot of confusion, which is why you're thinking so much. So let's go to the root of the problem. The more you be with these truths, your thoughts will come down automatically. So you'll be more meditative.
Right. I agree with that. And it's so interesting as well, because it's so important for us and for people, I think, to read these things and to sort of learn the Bhagavad Gita, like you said, learn it, read it, know it for yourself. Because the thing is, like you said before, other people are reading it, non-Indians are reading it, and other people who have vested interests against Hindus are reading it. They're making their warped interpretations of it, and they're putting it out to the public, and the public is reading it, and they're thinking that is what the Gita stands for, and that is what the Upanishad stands for, that is what the Vedas stands for. So we need, like I said, and again, it's part of creating that counter narrative, and it's creating a long-term narrative that you need to read these things, you need to interpret these things, and you need to put the truth out there. So I think with that, I want to take a couple of audience questions as well. So Krishna Rao was asking, what is your opinion of Rajiv Malhotra? Well, have you read anything by him, and what do you think about him?
Yes, sure. I've followed Mr. Rajiv Malhotra's works very closely. I've seen many of his talks. So he was actually attending one of the programs with Swamiji in 2016, December 2016. I was attending the same program. So I've seen him in person. I've heard him have these discussions with Swamiji around Hinduism. So I really admire a lot of his works. And I think he has single-handedly solved a lot of problems of academic Hindu phobia. But I see a lot of people, Hindus now, going and sort of dumping their problems on him. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Right. Instead of taking the lead from him, instead of taking inspiration from him and becoming more and more like him and doing what he's doing. So I think what Rajiv Malhotra ji stands for today is what every Hindu should be working towards. So whatever he's done, he has busted so many myths around Hinduism. So he has picked up so many texts and literally taken the effort and time to not only dissect the translations of all these Shalin Pollock, Wendy Doniger, Audrey Trishke, all these people. There's a lot more. Right. So he has done that, and he's also answered people live. I've seen so many of his talks with Western scholars where he has literally dismantled their entire argument, and shown how baseless it is. So, of course, all of us need to start working towards becoming more and more like that and taking on more and more tasks like that. So it may not happen overnight, because, of course, it did not happen overnight for him also. But he stuck it out, right? He faced so much criticism. Even
he's been working for decades, literally.
Decades, literally, right? So we need to start doing more of that and see his persistence, how much persistence he has had in being authentic to whatever he is doing. So, every Hindu, they pick up at least one aspect of Hinduism, not even all, and just keep that same consistent messaging and be with it for, whatever time is left for them on the planet. We will have so many more people like Rajiv Malhotra. And I think that is what he also wants. Whenever I see him respond to people on Twitter and otherwise, I think that is what he also wants. He wants people to do what he's doing, not come and tell him what to do, right?
Right.
Like, you don't go and give homework to him. He already has his own task.
Plenty of homework.
You learn from him and do what he's doing. So, that's what I have to say on that.
And Blueberry Incense is asking, what's your opinion on how Hindu society can sort of move away from caste or solve the caste problem? Now, I know this is a pretty complex issue and it's a complex probably answer as well, but just what would be some preliminary thoughts you'd think?
So I would have to take at least a few minutes to answer that.
Absolutely.
It's a complex problem. So this is an answer to everyone who has been badgering me to answer this question. This is not the first time this question has come to me. At least I've got at least 20 to 50 comments or questions through miscellaneous forums asking me to answer this question. I wanted to reserve my answer to this until a little later date because I wanted to give exact verses, all the verses of Manusmriti and all the verses from Bhagavad Gita. A good part of my work is done, but it's not over. That's why I wanted to hold on to that answer. But I'll at least give answer whatever he's asking now. So the problem is not that complex. Problem is very simple. Problem is caste system was imposed on us. It is not a part of Hinduism. Hinduism had something called Varna and Jati. Varna was simply Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Okay. So like I just cited the example of Nachiketa, and there are so many more examples. There's Valmiki, there is Vedvyas. There are so many examples of people who were sort of born into one Varna, but switched into one or more Varnas during the lifetime. So Varna was not based on your birth at all. It was based on not even your actions. What is the motivation of your action? What is it that wakes you up in the morning? What is it that drives you forward? When you fall into that pit, when you feel you're going to die, when you feel like you don't have anything left to do in life, what is it that picks you up? That is what defines your Varna.
Right.
If that feeling is, I want to do good to the world, I want to share whatever knowledge I have till now with the world, you are a Brahmana. If that feeling is, I want to fight for the people, I want to protect the people who are doing good to the world, I want to, be a force to deal with, then you are a Kshatriya. If your feeling is, I want to go on contributing, I want to create more and more, I want to do more and more creative stuff in the world, I have a lot of talent which I want to use in this world, then you are a Vaishya. And if you don't have any purpose and you don't have any specific desire, you're okay to work with any of the first three, then you are a Shudra. You want to give your time. I'm not saying this out of disrespect, be clear. There's the whole cycle of Hinduism is you don't directly jump to a Brahmana, right? There is a cycle of evolution. There is a phase in which people are not clear in what is the purpose in life. They don't know what for they should give their time. So, but if they are willing to give that time to something which somebody else has a purpose for, then you are a Shudra. So the word Shudra has lost its entire meaning.
Right.
But that is where it was. And from a Shudra, you can anytime evolve to, any of the other Varnas. The moment you have that sense of awakening, the moment you have that sense of, waking up to what your purpose is or what you really feel excited about, what you feel really driven by,
right,
then you automatically switch to the next Varna. You always have the freedom to go into what you want. That was Varna, right? Now, this whole definition understanding is completely into pieces and sold as meal to eat. That system was imposed by the British, and before that there were Islamic invaders who tried to use this caste system, but they were not great. They didn't have the intelligence to really do too much to our caste system. They just tried to divide a society, separate the Brahmins out, that kind of thing. But they did not have the intelligence to play that divisive politics which the British did.
Right.
So the British, of course, used that whole divide and rule to the letter and spirit. They divided the whole society. And there's a whole lot of detail which I can share a little later. I think it will take a lot of time, so I'm just cutting it out. Basically, it was Lord Risley who wanted to have a numerical way of classifying people.
Right.
So, and he was really boggled with the numbers of Hindus, and he was really boggled by the number called caste, because caste is from kasta, and we are jatis. So he thought that those jatis are castes. What he thought was, okay, this is 4 and this is infinite. So let me try 4. So he started mapping jatis in, and he completely, destroyed the whole concept of varna not being related to jati. Right. So there may be, so like this is this very common thing we say, right? Coincidence is not the same as conclusion, something like that.
Right. Yes.
Correlation is not causation. Sorry,
causation,
right?
yeah.
It's a mathematical term which is applicable in this very scenario. So there may be a lot of people in a certain jati who are Brahmanas, but like I was saying, correlation is not causation. Just because you're from that jati doesn't automatically make you a Brahmana. But they did that same, they unused that principle of correlation and causation. They took correlation as causation, and they mapped all the jatis into one or the other caste system. And then they started selling it as for the purpose of census. We needed to do these census. They started, basically eventually referring to each of the jatis as one or the other caste. And this is what India is living with today, and nobody has bothered to undo it. Simply put, because of vote bank politics, right? So the problem of caste will no longer exist if you realize there is no such thing. It's like you're fighting a ghost. I mean, I don't know how, in what polite, in what pleasant, in what socially acceptable way to tell people that the problem of caste system is imaginary. It's not a real thing. You're suffering for no reason. If you have been told you are a Dalit and you're oppressed and you need to fight for your rights, you're a fool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this, but it's just that I'm not saying this out of disrespect. I'm saying this because I feel empathy for the people who are suffering with manufactured notions which were never there, right? So there's a whole lot of abusers which come and start, giving me their peace of mind, telling me, oh, the caste for the person who's living over there, the caste system is real, and this and that. Why are you believing what people have told you, right? You're a human being. You're born with a will. You're born with a choice. Only human beings have the power of will and choice. All other yonis don't have that power, right? That is why human beings are considered the most evolved yonis. That is why if you need enlightenment, you need to be born as a human. Even devatas don't have that option. Only enlightenment is possible only as a human being. So have a little respect for that as a human being. Right. See, the problem is, I'll be really frank here, a lot of people prefer to remain as Dalits, or Dalit is the wrong word. By the way, there was a High Court recommendation on not using the word Dalit because it is derogatory. So I'm using the word just to relate with what people are saying, but I don't approve of the usage of the word by itself. And people should know that was given, I think it was Jaipur High Court, which gave that order. So you are suffering with a notion which does not exist. And a lot of times these castes, these scheduled caste tribes, other backward castes, and many such caste people, they continue to play that game because there are certain benefits attached to it, right? There's a certain amount of minority appeasement. There is a certain amount of vote bank politics. There is a certain amount of benefits, reservations. There is a certain amount of benefits, right? So you should be, if you are sticking on with that label, you should be clear. You're doing it because you get some benefits out of it, not because some Hindu guru came and told you are that, right? And it is always your option. So, when I was writing JEE, right, I wrote IIT JEE. So, of course, I wrote in the general category, but I found that so many of my, classmates, batchmates, or other people in my college, they actually wrote from the SC, ST, category. And they were from completely well-off families. They did not have any need to write from that reservation category. And there were some people who were, not from any backward caste, but they were from economically weaker parts of the world, and or they needed economic support for some other reason, family situation or whatever. They did not have that option. They wrote it from the general category. So it was so lopsided, I felt so angry sometimes looking at these people. Like, I mean, I may have, I may be very friendly with them, but at the same time, I felt like it was completely hypocritical of them to keep using that tag and keep using that for reservations, and to not, restore dignity to themselves. Like, you do it because you get some benefits out of it. So if you really want to get rid of the caste system, all the people collectively, Hindus, need to discard the caste system. There is no such thing. We all have our places in the society and we are proud of it, right? So there's no other reason for it to exist other than the political and religious exploitation. I would call it exploitation because a lot of people are just ignorant or they're unaware of the political agendas, or they unconsciously buy into these political and religious agendas. So a lot of these people from a lot of these castes are also the scapegoats of conversion.
Right.
So the Article 25 and 26 in the Constitution, which talks about religious freedom and religious conversion, it talks about you are free to convert to a religion voluntarily, but forced conversion is a crime. At the same time, the Constitution is not able to identify and lay down guidelines on what is considered a forced conversion,
Right,
or what is considered a willful conversion. And there is this gray area where people convert to some other religion because they're paid to do that. And at the same time, they also keep taking the benefits of that same scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBC. Because, whenever you file your name, you're not changing your name. You're not changing anything. You're just, instead of going to, say, the temple around the corner, you start going to the church, right? So your names are still the same. So when it comes to other aspects of life, they still keep taking the same benefits.
right.
And they also keep, they show themselves as some other religion. So the problem of caste system is just that of collective unconsciousness. It's like you're fighting a ghost. You should just discard the whole notion of caste system and that whole idea of which caste reservation needs to be dropped. It should be only on the basis of economics. I don't know if it can happen. Even Rajiv Malhotra ji has said the same thing.
Right.
Because we were talking about him, that it'll be a very big breakthrough for India if we do that. But for political reasons, it just does not happen. You saw how much uproar there was on just one amendment to that one act on SCST Act, right? There was so much backlash the government received for that. And I think the people, specifically the people from these backward classes, need to start restoring their own dignity and defining their caste instead of accepting somebody else's definition of their own caste. If you're really into education, if you really feel inspired by these Vedic truths, you want to share these truths, you are a Brahman. Doesn't matter which caste you're born in.
Yeah.
Right? So they need to start aligning themselves more. And I think the Agniveer team is doing a very good job of it. They are trying to make people realize this more and more. And I think, it will be a good thing for some of these people with me to maybe connect with their team and learn a little bit more on ground. And that is, I think, the way forward for all the Hindus.
I agree. And Parth is asking, you were talking about Upanishads and all these texts, and to read. There's so many different sorts of texts that have been published whose sort of interpretations aren't really the best. What would you say is a good source of which, if somebody wants to read the Upanishads, what's a good source or what's a good publication to read it from?
That's a difficult question to answer. I was really fortunate because I learned it directly from my guru. So I learned it from Swamiji. I will check if any of his books are published on the Upanishads. I know there is a Bhagavad Gita. There are 2 versions of Bhagavad Gita he has published. I will need to check if there is a version of Upanishads which is published. I don't know. I'll check and I'll get back if there is a book available. But most of what I learned is from his videos. There's like scores of his video lectures, of his video talks where he has spoken. He has spent like hours on just one verse. And so whenever I'm reading the Upanishads, I actually listen to his talks and I read the verse and I read multiple translations of the verse. And then I put it all together in my head. So that's what I do.
Right.
But for anyone who does not have that much time, you can, I'll need to get back on this to get back who is the best author.
Sure.
Which I would recommend, because I don't want to just recommend something without caring, right? Because somebody is going to take my advice and do it, and it's going to make a difference to their lives. So when I recommend something to somebody, I really want to make sure that I'm recommending something authentic. So, but in the meantime, you're free to go and check out the talks of my guru if you want, because it's always easier to listen than to read. It's a little easier to absorb it also when you're listening as compared with reading. So I myself preferred that. As far as the translation is concerned, I'll probably get back to you.
Okay, so Parth, we will get back to you with your answer. Thank you for the question. And India D was asking, I don't know if you have an opinion on this necessarily, but what do you think about the Citizenship Bill? Have you heard about the Citizenship Bill that they've been trying to pass in Assam, where they're looking to give the Hindu sort of non-Muslim immigrants that are coming from Bangladesh into India and giving them citizenship. I personally think it's a good idea because if you look at Israel, if you look at what they do, they always reach out to Jews that are in trouble anywhere across the world, and they said, Israel is your home, and if you're in trouble, we'll take you and we'll make you citizens. And I think India should do that with Hindus. What do you think about that?
So I'm not sure exactly what he is referring to, but I think the Hindus in Pakistan and Bangladesh and other parts of the world should definitely be welcomed back to India, because India is the home to Hindus. We are Hindustan. So there's no reason why Hindustanis from other parts of the world, Hindus from other parts of the world, should not be welcomed into India. They should definitely be. If we can accommodate Rohingyas in our country, we can definitely accommodate Hindus.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that Hindus should be welcome in India and should be given citizenship if they want that. If they
Right.
want that citizenship. So also, like, India has also been home to Parsis, been home to Tibetans, been home to many Jews, and India has always given refuge to these oppressed, sections of the world who were oppressed by some or the other leader or movement. So Hindus have also been oppressed. Hindus have definitely been oppressed in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. So I think it is important to reaccommodate them in India.
I think so as well. Okay, so I think we've taken quite a few questions, and I want to thank people for putting in the questions as well. And I think we've had a pretty meaningful conversation, and I obviously don't want to take too much of Arti's time as well. I want to, of course, thank Arti for taking the time out of her day to do this session today. It was a very meaningful conversation. I had a really good time. I hope you had I hope you enjoyed this conversation as well, Arti.
Yes, definitely. And it was so interesting to be able to talk about these to an audience who actually understands or who actually appreciates it, because I talk about it all the time.
Right.
But not necessarily does the audience actually appreciate it or have listening for it. So when you, irrespective of where I go, whether it's a client meeting or it's a casual, friendly conversation with an old friend, this is by default what the conversation becomes about.
Right.
So I'm always talking about it, but it's nice to sometimes talk to people who actually want to listen to it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think that's why, that's what we're trying to do here is create that ecosystem. And I want to be able to create that ecosystem where people like yourselves who have these, who know so much about these things and who have these opinions can come and sort of in a long form express those opinions. So I really do think, I mean, just looking at the chat as well, I think people really enjoyed what you had to say, and people really found what you had to, bring to the table very useful. So again, thank you for providing us with the information.
Thank you so much for having me over. This is a lot of fun.
No, definitely. Thank you. And we should definitely do this again soon. Guys, thank you for sending in your questions. Thank you for participating in the chat. I will see you again for the next episode. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you soon. But before I go, you should definitely go check out Arti's channel. It's called Hinduism News. Look it up on YouTube. The link to the description, the link to her YouTube channel is provided in the description below. Make sure you go check that out. Go follow Arti on Twitter and Facebook as well. I'll provide the links to that in the description as well. You can subscribe to my channel if you'd like. Again, just click on the subscription button right there. And thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys for the next time.